This week, I'm joined by none other than John Strand. We're going to do an interview with Adam Gordon of IT Pro TV, provided John doesn't have to run and do a presentation. That topic will be about penetration testing. We're going to cover the news, including LogRhythm, Mimecast, Swim Lane, Vendor Hawk, which, if you haven't heard of them, it involves ServiceNow and an acquisition. Then Jeff Mann will join us to talk about the RSA vendor show floor wrap-up and some of the things that Jeff learned at RSA. All that and more on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
A tiger. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. I don't know how this is going to go because Paul's not here this week, but we're just going to give it a shot.
Even if you've got experience in security, you can benefit from going to somewhere and learning about that bug again. Wearing my tactical turtleneck just for Mr. John Strand, who is on the lines via Skype. John, welcome to the program.
I'm wearing the tactical fleece as well, Paul. This is excellent. A fully, completely, and utterly tactical show.
Improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations with DF Labs security orchestration, automation, and response technology. Automate threat containment, orchestrate incident response, and measure operational performance with DF Labs in-command SOAR platform. Leverage your current security resources to minimize incident resolution time, maximize analyst efficiency, increase the number of incidents handled, and reduce overall risk. In-command SOAR acts as a force multiplier, enabling your security team to do more with less. Streamline the full incident response lifecycle automation process today. Keep your cybersecurity incidents under control with DF Labs. Visit dflabs.com/Security Weekly and request to see in-command SOAR live in action. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. This is episode 89, and it is May 2nd. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to bring on the lines via Skype from somewhere in Texas, I think, is Mr. John Strand. Welcome, John.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm currently at the IANS Forum in Dallas, Texas. We're trying to do this remote, and it's funny, Paul, after we've been doing Security Weekly and Enterprise Security Weekly for over a decade now, we still have no idea how to actually do this stuff remotely so it actually comes across okay. So if my audio is jarbled, video is jarbled, because I'm on the road, folks.
Yeah, I was talking with someone, and they were kind of actually a mutual friend of ours, and they were talking about the connectivity at hotels. You have all these wonderful amenities, but God forbid you try and use the internet, right, at any kind of venue or hotel. You can get all kinds of fun things in terms of amenities. I mean, I bet you they have a gym and such, right? But Wi-Fi, forget it. Like it doesn't work all that well.
Just doesn't work.
So let's see. Quick announcements. I'll start with Source Boston, actually. I'll be there May 9th and the 10th. We'll be there both days, covering the conference, doing interviews. I will be giving a presentation about Docker security or Docker insecurity, and basically chronicling my journey of taking one of our internal applications and moving it into a more of a DevOps environment. And I am really excited to present this material. You'll get kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the way we are doing and trying to do software development and what our internal project is that helps us produce all of our shows. So That's going to be fun because I made lots of mistakes, and I'm going to tell you about them so that you don't make the same ones. On to the news for this week, John. Actually, it was a pretty decent news week. Coming out of RSA, certainly, there's a lull before, a lull after. Now I think we're back into the swing of things, and we've got all kinds of new buzzwords and such to talk about, like intent-based security, intent-based networking, or IBN,
Yeah,
maybe.
you went right to it.
I went right to it, dude. I mean, companies try and create their own categories. They try and create their own themes, and I feel like is a small percentage that are able to really come out in the market with a new concept or new idea and give it a new name and really make a splash. I mean, that is biting off a lot, and I'm not sure that everyone can necessarily chew it. So,
and there's some things in this article, like the AngloSec application owner simply requested network connectivity in their own application-specific language. AngloSec automatically translates these requests into underlying technical and network-centric firewall rules. It then assesses these changes, requests, and risk compliance and industry corporate regulations, and it automatically implements them directly with relevant security devices, all with zero touch. And it says it does this all securely as well. Look, I understand what intent-based networking is, but basically the idea that it's zero touch and that security isn't a problem is total garbage.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it ties into another story that was talking about automation. Was this the story that was talking about essentially like artificial intelligence automatically making firewall rule changes based on the changing environment? Was that the story?
Yep, that was this one. Automatically making changes to firewalls and network devices as needed.
That scares me. I mean, I'm all for automation, right? But the fact that there's going to be technology in my network that's going to look at applications and then automatically make changes to software-defined networks and various control points to allow that application to work, that's kind of scary to me. I feel like that could be very easily abused. I feel like that could also cause some pretty major problems. I really like the automation and orchestration tact where in this model, let's say there is a new application and it wants to make those changes, present that to an analyst and say, hey, there's a new application, and hey, look, I can go make all these changes for you to allow this to work and automate that process. Like, do you want to do it? I still believe that there has to be a human somewhere in that process to make the decision and also document that decision with human interaction.
Yeah, and I mean, the idea of an intent-based networking kind of approach is to make it so you can make your network and make your services and processes available without having to go to every single device and allow it. So it is an orchestration platform, and I think in some ways that's good. But the idea that it's zero touch is garbage. The idea that it's going to make it more secure is also trash. So, there's actually a there, right? But it's not this magical, hey, we can fire our network team and the executives can now say, please expose our API to the world and magic happens. Because the only way that happens is with any rules after a while.
Right, exactly. Fortinet is in the news again. And it's interesting because I caught up with them at InfoSec World. And also they've announced a partnership with IBM's new X-Force threat management service. And there's a lot of people that I believe we know and love were over there working for X-Force. A lot of names I still recognize. And so I thought that was kind of cool that they were forming a partnership. I think Fortinet is really, the fact that we're seeing them more in the news, John, and we're seeing them at even some of the not gigantic shows like RSA and Black Hat, but other more community-focused events really means they're trying to make a big push into security. And I think this announcement with X-Force Threat Management Service is certainly part of that. And I've been hearing good things. And I don't know if you've seen any of the X-Force stuff lately, but certainly seeing this in the news is an indication that they're really trying to make inroads in the security community.
Well, and the more partnerships that Fortinet actually cultivates, the better. For example, Justin, one of the people that runs Infogressive, as a managed security service provider, they absolutely love Fortinet.
Yeah.
And Fortinet's kind of got an uphill battle against a lot of the big name vendors in the space. And I think what we've talked about this in the past. Whenever you have a vendor Fortinet's not a small company.
No.
But they're definitely smaller than a Cisco.
Sure.
That means they have to kick ass in absolutely every possible way that they can because they're displacing in many ways an existing technology. And after a while, they'll win, and then they'll start becoming kind of cash cows and get lazy. But for right now, I think you're right. They're doing a lot of really cool moves.
Yeah. LogRhythm, and speaking of partnerships, LogRhythm and Mimecast, two companies that I really like, John, which is kind of interesting. I did recently take a briefing with Mimecast and understand, their position in the market today. They've got some really cool technology, and they're making a push into more of an enterprise security play that's somewhat newer to them, but they're realizing they have solutions for that, and integrating with other intelligence sources. I think it's interesting when you look at email security companies. It's tough to pinpoint any kind of like competition because they're all partnering either with each other or other vendors for integration to make that happen. So,
and I can also give Mimecast the BHIS seal of approval. We've done a couple of tests on some environments that actually had Mimecast set up, and it looks pretty solid.
Nice.
Just like everything, there's ways around it, but seriously, they definitely look like they're ahead of a lot of the competition at the moment.
That's awesome. It's good to hear. Swimlane is augment security orchestration and automation response with VMware integration. Now, I'm familiar with Swimlane. VMware,
I'd never heard of.
Never heard of. They say they're a leading provider in advanced threat analysis and detection. I think that market probably could be well over 100 companies at this point.
Did it date a Kardashian at one point? I don't know.
It says it helps customers rapidly inspect and classify potentially malicious files at scale, performing deep malware analysis and automating incident response processes for faster and more efficient advanced threat protection. I feel like you could slap that sentence on any number of vendors and it would be applicable, and we still wouldn't quite know what differentiates them in the marketplace. How are these?
And I'm not ripping on either one of these. I mean, Swimlane we've had come up a couple of times. But how is it that we do this for a living? I mean, we literally do this for a living, and then we get completely surprised by companies like VMware. Just exactly how many new security companies are entering this market per month? It's just astounding.
It is. And I mean, and to their credit, we say this all the time, right? Like, we're just covering the announcement. They could have really crummy technology, or they could have really awesome technology. And a lot of the vendors that we haven't dug into or taken briefings with, or, talked with their customers, we don't quite know yet. And we've already kind of highlighted ones that, we have talked to their customers or we have done a briefing with, or both. And, when we're impressed, that's ones that I want our listeners to pay attention to, as the goal of this show is to help you navigate the waters. But, if you are maybe someone out there is using VMware and really likes them, we want to hear from you.
Let us know. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that does concern me too is we do a lot of assessments, and a lot of these products that we discuss don't show up. And when they do, Paul, like you said, we name names. If product's complete garbage, I'm going to let you know, and you're going to let everybody know. If it works, great. We're going to say, hey, this is pretty cool. Our customers seem to be happy. But it blows me away that almost every single show, I would say 75% of the vendors that we're talking about, I'm just not seeing. So either they don't apply, or they're just not really getting the market share that they need to continue to survive. So it's going to be interesting to see how this, if we continue to see more vendors like this, or it continues to coalesce and fewer customers.
Yeah,
fewer and fewer vendors. My bad.
And don't think that any kind of negative review or feedback is necessarily like a permanent black mark, right? I mean, because they might just be ready for a pivot or going into a different area, like changing their messaging and positioning, and emerge as something that does work for customers, maybe in a different way, but where they are today maybe isn't meeting customer needs, or maybe they just got like their messaging completely wrong and they've changed it, and now 6 months or a year later we're covering them again, and we're like, oh, well, that makes a whole lot more sense. Like, they just needed some time to figure out the market and their go-to-market strategy. So a lot of times they get that piece wrong. Their tech could be awesome. We could cover them as like, well, it really doesn't work all that well, and it's just a matter of changing, their go-to-market position and such. So,
yep.
Juniper has kind of an interesting announcement. They claim to do a lot of things here with their next-generation firewalls that feed directly into an advanced threat protection appliance that enables aggregation and correlation of security events from various Juniper and third-party sources into a consolidated timeline view of all threats on the network, and allow security teams to prioritize critical alerts and mitigate threats. The thing that got me was with one click, right? This is like that single pane of glass with one click kind of thing. I don't believe that we can say that is really true of any vendor when they say single pane of glass or one click. Like that's not what security is. I mean, maybe in certain aspects, if you've automated a process, it's still not like one click. Just reeks of FUD and just not good.
Well, but this goes back to, Paul, what we discussed in the past, that we see two separate things. What executives are looking for is a single pane of glass and a single click solution, automation, orchestration, all of these things. And what we see on the ground is the organizations that have engaged staff are actually the better organizations that are more positioned to detect advanced attacks. And I can understand why executives want that, because it simplifies the overall problem. And I think from the outside, when you come into security, it looks like it should be a solvable, easy thing to deal with. But whenever you start getting into the guts of it, it's really ugly. Now, the thing that I like about what Juniper's doing is they're actually talking about using behavioral analytics as well. And, I'm a huge fan of behavioral analytics because I hate SIMs with a passion of like 1,000 burning suns. And behavioral analytics, I think, is where SIM should have been moving 10 years ago. And I like to see that they actually have the built-in threat behavior analytics as well. So that's a cool feature that I'd like to see at some point in an assessment.
ServiceNow, I thought, made a really cool acquisition. I think this fits in line with their product suite today. And, everything I read about this company and the way they describe themselves, I thought was spot on, John. I think this is a great example where VendorHawk, and they actually pulled an interview that they did like a year ago where they described their company. And I thought they did a great job here, right? So VendorHawk says companies buy a lot of software they don't end up using. VendorHawk helps companies use what they bought, save money where possible, and plan smarter for the future. So they're essentially assessing what SaaS solutions you might have and telling you about the ones that are in use and the ones that are not, so that you can consolidate and basically just be a more efficient organization. I think that also speaks to security as well. We talk about reducing the attack surface. If you're not using some of these SaaS providers, then just kill them off and don't renew your subscription and finish the migration, right? If you're migrating between SaaS providers, as an example. And now that ServiceNow is obtaining that ability, ServiceNow has great insight into your network about where are your assets, where are your applications, who owns what application, and creating that nice map for you, which I think ServiceNow does very, very well. Now they can tell you also a lot more data about what SaaS solutions you're using and include that, because let's face it, there's most organizations today are using some kind of software as a service in the cloud. Especially newer organizations, you're likely 80% or better software as a service. So I think this is a smart pickup from ServiceNow.
And let's also kind of cover again why this is important from like an enterprise security perspective. If you have a company that can go and evaluate what type of software as a service you're using and not using, the more services and the more kind of applications that are exposed, the greater your overall attackable surface is. So if you can actually assess and say, hey, we really don't need this portal, it's used by like 3 people, and we can kill it or roll it into something else, you're reducing your overall attack surface quite a bit. And I'm giving a presentation on this very topic here in 30 minutes about how to reduce the amount of vendors that you have in your organization as a security topic, because it's huge. We always add software. Very rarely do organizations remove software in their environments. Yeah,
no, it's certainly true. And a lot of times it's that software that not many people are paying attention to that is often the one that bites them, right? Yeah, I'm sure you see that in your pen test all the time, right? I mean, when we did pen test together, we'd pick on a system, and then you get time even before you write the report, right? You go to the company, you're like, yeah, we're working in like this angle on this system, and they're like what? I didn't know that existed, or what is that, or oh yeah, we're phasing that out, and like that ends up being like the weakest link.
Or my favorite was that doesn't count because we didn't know that system was there and we're retiring it. It's like no, that's the point.
If I can get to it, it counts. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh boy. I want to talk a little bit about machine learning and what I initially thought, John, was a serious marketing ploy to do what we talked about at the beginning of this segment and create a new term. However, this new term is actually a thing that I've read about very, very briefly. I'm hoping you have a little more insight into it than I do. But they're talking about machine learning and being in line with DARPA's second wave machine learning. And the headline is Second Wave Machine Learning from Silence. is lightweight and effective endpoint protection. I'm like, oh, here we go with the marketing buzzwords. I'm like, oh, no. Second wave machine learning is actually a thing defined by DARPA. And if you read into the article, they link to another article that gives us one sentence about how they define second wave machine learning. And that is machines perform probabilistic decisions, classifying and predicting data, but the context of those decisions is not understood by the machine.
Yep.
So I thought it was good that they defined it.
And it's really just the ability to bring more algorithms to bear, right? Whenever you're trying to look at what application or a file is doing. And I think after a while, whenever you're a company like Cylance or CrowdStrike or Microsoft with ATP, the more data you actually collect as far as what the attacks look like. I think somewhere in this document or another document, they talk about looking at Word documents. I mean, crap, Paul, we're old. We've been doing this a long time. 15, 16 years ago, we were using macros to gain access to environments. And just last week, we used a macro to gain access to an environment. So why exactly does a document have executable code in it? The only time that you ever really see that is whenever an attack is in play. So that's kind of, we're looking into collecting better metrics, better data, and developing better algorithms. It all required us to collect a tremendous amount of data in the security industry in the first place. And Cylance and CrowdStrike and Microsoft are basically at that point where they have a tremendous amount of data. Now they can start putting it into better use.
Yeah. Let's see. Cisco did make an announcement, and I thought that was interesting from Cisco's perspective, talking about what they term as production grade Kubernetes. And I think this is, something in your probably more for Application Security Weekly, but enabling your enterprise to deploy new applications in this model. We're starting to see larger players such as Microsoft, such as Cisco, such as Red Hat, really get on board with let's help these large enterprises and offer technology solutions to them that allow them to deploy microservices and containers at scale in a cloud environment. They talk about Cisco's cloud environment, Cloud Center, which I think is really lagging behind. I think Amazon really has the edge on all of these companies as it stands today. And if I'm sitting here making a decision, if you're going to provide a service and use this methodology, Amazon's going to be your logical choice. And Amazon has, what is it called? Fort something.
Elastic Container Services?
Yeah, they even released something new that is exactly this from Cisco. It's exactly, basically allows you to just drop containers, and they do the orchestration and the container management for you. It's FortGate, something like that. It was a newer announcement from them. It's a newer service, but it is essentially the same thing as what Cisco is providing. And Cisco probably is still playing catch up to Amazon. Matt Alderman came on the show a couple of weeks ago. He was at an Amazon AWS event and said there was a line out the door for developers and IT ops people to learn about this new technology, because it can be a place where basically you just take your container and you're letting Amazon do all of the orchestration and all of the container management. So I think Cisco is, again, playing catch up.
Well, it's a weird way how a lot of these companies are playing catch up, right? Like you have Swarm, you have Mesos, you have all of these different platforms for orchestration. And basically what this is showing is Kubernetes has won.
Yes.
If you look at Microsoft, you look at Amazon, you look at a lot of these different vendors, they basically wanted to be the orchestration vendor. That's what they wanted to be. And basically, now we're starting to see everybody start to sport Kubernetes, and that is the standard. Honestly, if somebody was going to get into orchestration, Salt Stack's kind of cool. But seriously, if someone wanted to have a good career moving forward, I would say learn Kubernetes, and because it's just one more domino falling towards Kubernetes, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's it. Did we cover all the stories?
That's it. I think we did. And
awesome.
Now I need to get running, so that's awesome.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. With that, we are going to take a short break, come back with Adam Gordon from IT Pro TV to talk about pen testing. Stay tuned.